Tamer is a data analyst at TikTok. He also runs Career Talks, which is a podcast which I highly recommend all of you to visit. John is a principal consultant at Mott MacDonald. Kareem is a strategy operations consultant at BCG. Before BCG, he was actually at FTI as well as Strategy and without much delays, I pass the stage to Tamer to start.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'll start with some questions just to understand the audience better. I want to see what you guys are studying, if you don't mind. So, who's doing engineers? There was a couple here, and then economics, business, law. I didn't know. Nice. So, I think today it will be helpful to. I just wanted to know what you're studying, just for me to get an understanding of the audience. But first of all, thank you for coming in. I appreciate you coming to the classes and a couple of events, so thank you. And thank you, Samarth and the Consulting Society for organizing that event. I'm super excited, and I might be extra excited today. I'll tell you a bit why. I was in your position around 3 years ago, so applying for jobs, and before that in my third year, so I did 4 years of university, and I was just trying to really understand, like, what do I want to do for a living, and what's the meaning of having a passion. I was really like, understanding what my passion is, and slowly reality hit me on my fourth year, where I started applying to jobs, where I realized you just need a job, and whatever opportunity came across, I needed to go for that opportunity. So it was a tough journey for me specifically, because I really wanted to do something fulfilling myself, but it was hard to find a job. I was applying to jobs in the UK, so I studied at the New York University of Abu Dhabi. So it was even a bit more challenging to find a job here in the UK. And I think once I even started working, the reality was even harsher, where it's a 9 to 5, and you just wake up, go to your job, eat dinner, and repeat. So I wasn't really satisfied at all with the situation. So I really wanted to kind of share some insights on these expectations versus reality to people who are going through or will go through that journey of selecting a career or knowing what a career in consulting is or what a career in finance is. So that's why I started my podcast, Career Talks, where I was really keen on just bridging that gap between how do I perceive what consulting is, what finance is as a student, versus what it really is once you start working in it. And I started working at a big tech company, and my expectations versus reality there was a very big in that sense. So I started talking to people, and I thought, why not just film these chats that I had with professionals? So I literally started talking to fund managers, consultants. So I even had an episode with Kareem and Don on the podcast, investment bankers, people in private equity, just really share these insights in terms of what do these people really do and why did they choose that specific career path. So that consultant, how come they end up in, why that specific job, why that specific company. So hopefully today we'll be touching on that in terms of what is consulting, why did you choose consulting, what does it mean to be a consultant. So yeah, we'll be seeing on that and understanding how you chose your niche as well, and why are you on that career path now. So I'm super excited. Before I pass it to the speakers, I'll just some fun facts about them. So John actually was the basketball coach at his uni in the University of Bath. He first didn't want to take the job, but he went for it, and he really liked that part of his university journey. Kareem here also had an opportunity to take care of a cat at their home. He was like, no, I'm not a cat person. Let's not do this. I don't know if this is going to be like a good idea. And he's a cat dad. He really loved the cat. So that's Kareem. But yeah, I'll pass it to the speakers. I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves or...
Well, thanks everyone for coming. I'm Kareem, work at BCG. I've been there for a year and a half now. At BCG, I've been mainly doing sports consulting, so strategy consulting within the sports vertical. And before that, I worked at FTI Consulting and Strategy and goods, logistics, and so on. I come from an engineering background, so in civil engineering, John and I were in the same course at Preston Bath. And yeah.
Thank you, Kareem. Thank you, Tamara. Nice to meet you all, and nice to be here today. So I'm a principal consultant at Arnold. For those of you who don't know, Arnold is an engineering firm, but like the big four, so if you think PwC, KPMG, and the others, they've got an auditing function and a consulting function. We've got an engineering function and also a consulting function. So I sit in a very specialized part of the consulting sector, in the sense that most of my clients are in the infrastructure and energy space. I currently lead the climate change, sustainability, and ESG consulting capability for Mott MacDonald. So I started in that role about a year ago with a team of just myself, and now we're a team of 20 people, so significant growth over the last year. And before that, I was kind of doing some of my career actually at McDonald's, so I've been there for a long time, but somewhere else for a bit and came back. But across my career, I've done things from kind of project finance, M&A, strategy, into things like digital transformation, product management, and now more or less really into climate change and sustainability.
Amazing. So I think we've had someone who's focusing on one specific area towards the end of their, or like now in your career journey. There's someone who tried different industries. So we'll be touching a bit of what's the benefit of not really specializing and working in different industries versus really focusing on a specific industry. Before we jump into that, maybe it would be good to just share with us what were important moments or pivotal moments in your career and how did they impact your career now, if you can share a bit on that.
He's always passing the mic thing. I think the pivotal moment for me, and probably this is more relevant to yourself, is the placement year that I did at university. I'm not sure if at Queen Mary that is an option, but in Bath there's an option to be year-long placement. So I did that in my third year. And as I said, I was doing civil engineering, so I did a structural design-based placement. And I think that was pivotal because it showed me that civil engineering is not a path for me. And that triggered my search into other fields. And I actually did the least amount of months possible in that year-long placement in order for me to try something else. And that's how I ended up getting an internship in consulting and pursuing that as a graduate job and then as a career.
I was going to say the same thing. Say something different. For me, it's a good thing that I lived with him after placement, because I had no idea what consulting is until he came back from placement in terms of third year, and he was like, "Oh, done this placement in consulting," and he was explaining it to me, and I was like, "What the hell are you on about? What is this thing that you're talking about?" So that for me was kind of when my eyes first opened into the consulting. I also did a placement in structural engineering, which I didn't necessarily enjoy. For me, a pivotal moment was when I was choosing my specialization. For a while, I've been doing a bit of digital and data and climate change. But there was one specific project that I did where I ended up sort of leading an industry coalition of different kind of, engineers, consultants, private equity companies, insurers, climate data providers, to understand kind of how we as an industry can solve the issue of climate change. And that for me kind of was a big moment in terms of finding in consulting that I can enjoy, but also kind of make an impact for others around the world and kind of myself as well. So for me, it's one specific opportunity which was one project that opened kind of in terms of what I want to specialize in.
In the audience, we have people that know business, some engineers. So I have a specific question on what do you think about this like degree relevance when it comes to what you studied versus moving into consulting? We'll come to that. A follow-up question for you, John, before touching on what you do now. You did a master's in management at Imperial. Was this because you wanted to try to or make the transition easier? And how did that transition actually help you in your career as a consultant?
So I did the master's for two reasons. The first one was I actually wanted to buy myself some time because I didn't know, I still wasn't sure about this consulting as a career sort of trajectory, and that course was very sort of strong on people going into consulting after, and also it wasn't specific enough that I could pursue another kind of career path. So for me, it was okay going and trying and exposing myself to that sector, but also learning, the key skills that employers look for in terms of, engineering teaches you all the hard skills, analytical skills, problem-solving skills, but this was more about the soft skills of, teamwork and collaboration and public speaking and presentation and that sort of stuff. So that was kind of reason one. And reason number two was around the networks. I think networking and building your kind of pipeline of people that you know in industry or colleagues or classmates that go on to doing is a really positive thing, because it will have kind of a really big impact on your careers. And I think for me it was very pivotal in terms of finding, the opportunity that I'm in came from my involvement in that master's. So
Got it. And if some of the audience members now want to prioritize, because it comes to either want to apply to jobs or apply to masters, there's always this struggle of what should I focus on. If someone is to land and they're getting interviews, do you think it's better just to focus more on landing that job, and it's better to start straight into consulting? Or do you think that really the masters change your approach as a consultant and how you approach projects, kind of your skill set and knowledge? Because I know you touched on a bit of the skills that you gained, but I think it was really much different than a path where you just went straight as a consultant.
I think for me, I didn't have the foresight to start applying to consulting roles immediately. I applied to masters, but it's coming back to that point of wanting to buy myself a bit of extra time to kind of figure out what I wanted. But if I can turn back the time, I would have definitely been applying straight into consulting and trying to maximize that recruitment cycle and actually getting exposure to interviews and kind of how the process runs and answering the questions. The applications can take a lot of time, doing all the psychometric tests, all that sort of stuff is never easy. So I would have done that, and if I landed something, then great. If I didn't land, I would have a backup plan to go do a master's and masters again. So if I had to do it again, I would apply earlier.
Amazing, thank you.
If I may add, I
Please.
think my perspective on doing a master's after a bachelor's, straight after bachelor's, I think there's a couple of reasons why, in my opinion, one should do that. And that's if you want to go into academia and you're interested in pursuing further studies. Two, you are very certain about the career path you want to pursue, and a master's in that career path is really needed and helpful. And then maybe three, if you studied something to switch to a different topic, where that topic needs credentials, which is not the case for consulting. But if, I know some people did, business and they wanted to do law after, that is somewhere where you obviously need to do like a law conversion or do something academic to help you. But besides these three reasons, I think it's always best to expose yourself to doing an actual job, seeing what you like, what you don't like, and then making a more informed decision on doing a master's, or even in some cases your company might even sponsor you to do a master's or an MBA, which is even better. So that's
no, I definitely also agree on getting to try first, because studying and working are very different. It's always better to just try working a bit, just to get a sense of what do you actually do, what are your skills, what are you good at, so maybe you double down on those skills, and then that master's will help you. So if you're good at maybe analyzing data, you could do a master's in data analytics, but try to do that in your job that you landed as a graduate, so that you just get a sense of it before you really focus in your master's on that topic. So I agree also on that one. I think we've been talking.
Obviously,
Yeah.
this is just our personal perspective.
Right.
Some of you might differ on this topic.
100%. We've also been talking about consulting a lot. So for those who are not familiar with the concept of consulting, what it is, Kareem just defined it for us. In one of our episodes, we defined like the landscape of consulting. So if you want to share a bit, what is consulting and what does it offer for like the client or whoever you're working with, basically?
Maybe we understand the audience first. In terms of 1 to 10, who's like a 2, a 5, a 7, a 10? Who's like around the 2 in terms of understanding what consulting is? Okay. Like, it's fine to be a 0 as well. No clue. 5? Yeah. 10? Okay, a 10? Okay, so you kind of, as all of you have some understanding of what consulting is. I think the term is quite broad, first of all, so maybe for the purposes of this conversation, we try to narrow it down. We're essentially talking about management consulting as a broader umbrella, and within that, maybe we, and then John, please add if you want to tweak this definition, but I see it as a strategy consulting, operations consulting, digital, and then maybe there are like some niches or specializations beyond these three. And then within, so these are kind of like the verticals if you want, there are horizontals that you could define as your industries, so be it consumer goods or banking or telecommunications, whatever the industry is. That's kind of how I see it. And what consultants are trying to do is essentially help clients solve problems. I would say in 80% of the cases. There are 20% of the cases where they're there to play some political game that management has in mind, or some other reason. But at the core of it, at least from the projects that I was involved in, there's a problem that the client needs, and that problem could be a problem where they don't have the know-how. It could be that they might have the know-how, but they don't have the capacity, and it might not make sense to hire someone permanently, so they bring someone as a consultant. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, consultants are trying to do. I think the industries, horizontals are obvious, that we don't need to add a lot on that. Maybe the one thing to know is that there's a lot of horizontals, like I do sports consulting over the past few years. So it's not the typical big horizontals of consumers and industrials and banking and so on. There are some other smaller, more interesting horizontals as well. In terms of the vertical, this is like the area of highest ambiguity as to what consultants are doing. If we go back to the verticals I mentioned, like strategy, operations, tech, and then the fourth one, which is specializations that are more niche, or maybe not niche, or maybe just not in the remit of the traditional sense of management consulting. Like you have consultants on strategic communications that help companies communicate difficult messages in times of crises. Like, that's not the consulting we're talking about here. But if we focus on these three, I think I can talk the most about strategy and maybe operations. John, maybe you can talk a bit about digital. In terms of strategy consulting, that's typically where you're working with executives at big questions, let's say. So you're not working on a niche, you're addressing big questions like a profitability-related question or a market entry-related question. How can a company unlock a certain market, or whether a company should acquire a different company or merge with it. So things that the C-suite is thinking about. Other questions, maybe, I mean, given that most of you said the 5 out of 10 understanding, maybe you've come across these questions. Other ones that probably less obvious, for example, in sports consulting, how can a club increase its fan base, for example, or it could be related to a sporting wanting to start a new competition, and how do they go about that? Is it feasible? Is it not? How would you design it? So these big questions that require a lot of critical thinking are questions under that strategy vertical. If we talk about operations, this is more tangible. You might be working with something with an immediate effect, because on strategy it's mostly you have a longer term view. You're looking at things that you'll see their impact in 3, 4, 5 years. But in operations, it could be with immediate effect, so you might be working on supply chain related topics or procurement related topics. So that's where you might be working with a specific business unit within a company. So, for example, a lot of operations consultants work with the supply chain heads of a business, right? Or the procurement heads. How can they optimize the procurement and reduce procurement costs? Can they work on reducing the cost of the supply chain, or it could be on just reducing the cost within a specific business unit. So to me, that's more operations consulting.
I'll stop you here. Is it because of the nature of operations that it's only related to specific, or it's more likely that you will end up doing projects in certain industries like supply chain? If you're an operations consultant, is it because of what is that probably certain industries would need help from consultants, or you might have a finance-related project as an operations consultant as well? Or do you think that it's most likely that certain industries would require an operational consultant to come in on a project?
I mean, again, we're using broad terms to help simplify the landscape. Like within operations, there's several things you can be doing. But I think maybe the is some questions, because of the nature of consulting, how it is, I think just the main differentiation is within strategy, you're thinking about long-term, big questions, whereas within operations, it's maybe more targeted or short-term questions. To answer your question fully, it's not simple because of the differences in client needs, by industry, by even consulting company nuances, that it's hard to give a fully accurate answer because there's no such thing. But if we want to identify like a broad definition, I think that's how I would consider it. I don't know, John, if you want to add or destroy the whole definition.
I'll be very brief. So I just want to, in Kareem's definition, just thinking about the sort of the verticals and horizontals. So from my perspective, I've done a bit with the digital and data side, the data vertical, the tech vertical, and then I moved more recently into the niche vertical of climate change and sustainability. My horizontal has and always will be infrastructure and energy, because I think that's one of the key sectors that has the biggest impact on people's lives, and I think that's where sort of a lot of the carbon is, that's where all the climate risk is, and people rely on the infrastructure sector to, learn, for example, this university, come here, the tube, live in your accommodation, your buildings, that sort of stuff. So for me, in the tech space and the data space, I would answer questions like, to support the company strategy, how can I use data better to increase my profitability or increase the way or improve the way I deliver services to passengers on the train, or how do I improve safety in transport, or improve the operations of a university campus and improve the student experience. That could be one question that you can answer. And on the climate change side of things, it's how do I reduce the carbon of my operations? What's the financial financial impact if I don't? If you're just going to start paying for carbon in carbon markets, how does that impact my financial statements? Thinking about physical risk, there's increasing hurricanes, flooding, heat waves and drought. How is that going to impact the way a company operates and its financial statements and the safety of its work and that sort of stuff? I'm thinking about strategies and targeted investments to improve the performance. So we help clients understand the problem, set a strategy, build a business case, get the money, and deliver on that strategy.
And I think would be useful, if you don't mind, like how you break down, like what does it mean a project, like a strategy project or an operations focused project. So if you can tell us about an example in the day of life of consulting, working with a retail company as a strategy consultant. So what would you and how would you solve that problem? So like just the process of a project so that maybe the attendees get a better understanding of if I'm a consultant and working on a project, probably these are the tasks that I'll be doing if that makes sense.
Two things. I think this is an important follow-up, but maybe also to give you something very tangible, let's discuss afterwards. Where do companies fall within this matrix? Because if we think you guys, you're probably thinking, where do I apply if I want to pursue a career in consulting, and how does this definition fit with the market landscape of companies? But let's touch on that afterwards. In terms of what a project looks like, every project different, but let's just give an example of that project. Let's say you said a retail company wants to look into growing the revenue, let's say. What we would do is, again, the companies approach it in two ways. I'm just going to give like a very generic framework of how it might be approached. So such a might be 8 to 12 weeks long. And probably led by a strategy consulting firm. And then you might have one project manager and 3-4 junior people as well. The way these weeks would be structured is probably, let's say 2 to 4 weeks. You are baselining the business, maybe externally.
So here, baseline. Just in case someone doesn't know what baseline is.
So basically understanding the current situation. What does the status quo look like in the company? In terms of markets, in terms of customer segments, regarding the level, basically. And you look at, so that's the internal view, then you look at the external view. And the tasks you do with providing this retail data, so you might just grab off-the-shelf data on market size for retail, the competitive scale, and so on and so forth. And you analyze that data. But let's say you're working in some niche software industry. That part of the project might be a bit longer. You might be doing some market sizing, which requires a bit more thinking, more critical thinking. And that's where you would be using very tangibly Excel to build a market model to understand the opportunity. Like, what is the size of this market, and what is our current market share, and how much can we realistically grab more share from this market, and what would the impact of that be on our financials. So first 2-4 weeks, internal and external analysis and baselining, for example. Then, and that obviously you would be engaging the client. You'll probably be doing some also expert interviews, again, depending on how niche the opportunity is. And then you'll take all of that understanding of the business internally and the industry externally, and try to identify some opportunities that the client can go after. So let's say in the next 2 to 3 weeks, you'll be shortlisting opportunities. Again, if you go back to our retail client, this could be new geographic markets, it could be a new customer segment, it could be new product lines that they're selling, or it could be an inorganic growth, i.e. like they're going and acquiring or merging with a different business. So all of these organic and inorganic committees, you would list, and then you would try to understand with management.
We share their preferences, like they tell you, actually, we want to, let's try to focus on solutions where we open new geographies, or is
Yeah.
it for you to tell them and then you?
Depends on the client. Some clients have a clear idea. Like if we think of the Tesco's and the Sainsbury's of the world, they probably have more understanding of where they want to go forward compared to more retailer that is unsure where to pursue the next opportunity. And also because of their size, they probably have more opportunities to pursue compared to a very big retailer. Also, obviously, the type of resource you have within the company differs by size, and therefore their understanding of the situation, where they want to go, is probably different. So yeah, it could be very open-ended, or it could be targeted from management from the start. Assuming our client is small, they're super curious, they want to explore everything that happens, you'll start shortlisting these opportunities, trying to prioritize them. So you develop criteria to say, okay, what are we trying to achieve? What are the criteria by which we want to fill these opportunities and land on a set of, I don't know, 3 to 6 opportunities we want to prioritize. You can do that obviously through thinking on your own as a team, and then sharing that with the client. Maybe you do a couple of workshops with the senior management to get their thoughts. And then from there, you land on a set of opportunities. So we've done 3 weeks baseline, 3 weeks opportunity prioritization, and then maybe the last couple of weeks you're kind of modeling the impact of that. What is it going to be in terms of the impact on the over the next 20 years? And then maybe some clients want you to develop some sort of implementation plan. Again, for strategy consulting firms, the last part of implementation will be plan unless the client wants to make a separate project, which you want to develop a plan to plan this. And that's kind of
Makes sense. We will touch on where the big four is all in that landscape of verticals horizontals. Quickly before that, in terms of, you said that you might come as a consultant and say, this is the proposal, this is what we put forward, and then it's up to them to implement. Why do they think this is better? Like, is it better for you to fully implement the solution? Recommend us to this and that, open geographies, X, Y, Z, and then you wait for them to keep
they have a budget to keep things doing this job. Right? Let's say B, do they want to do that? Is it smart for them to outsource their core business? And that's some long run, it's not really sustainable, but also wants to have consultants doing the job. You want your own people and talent to own the business, because at the end of the day, they have ownership of the business. The implementation is not a 2-week thing. The implementation is a several months, could be several years sort of thing. It could be developing your marketing capabilities so that you can unlock new customer segments in certain areas, and that you don't do overnight. It takes time. Or it could be starting the business in a new geography, which will take probably more time. So you set up a high-level implementation plan, but then they need to work on it. But obviously, these projects eventually end up leading to other projects in certain areas. Client might need help in most cases.
And probably that's why in some cases the client has an internal strategy team that they start from scratch, just for them to do the recommendation proposal part, but also execute so that in-house someone has a better understanding of how the firm works, how it started, what are the key components, etc. So adding that to
Ideally,
in-house
everyone,
consulting.
ideally, several business units are impacted by this project and are given specific things to do. So the strategy team, might help set the vision, but then the there's the marketing team and the sales team and the supply chain team. All of them are probably in some way or another.
We can now touch a bit on if someone's just in a or versus MB. Can we see how they map to the landscape you described in terms of you have the verticals or the functions, data, strategy, operations versus horizontals like the industries, retail, sports, etc.
I think within strategy, like you have several firms. There are different ways of segmenting them. There's sometimes there's different tiers, but essentially, you've got firms here in London doing that. McKinsey, Bain, BCG, who have their own strategy consulting arms. EY Monitor has Lloyd, as Monitor. Strategy and we've got other firms like Oliver Wyman, what else should I help in? Economy, BK, these are all strategy consulting houses. And back to the framework, these names will definitely cover the strategy vertical strongly. So back to our long-term questions that they do. But especially I think in BCG, they also have the capabilities to do some operations and some tech. Their legacy and where they started and where clients go for them the most is strategy, but some of them do operations and tech just as well. So that's kind of your strategy house, if you like. Type number two, let's say the big four. These are massive companies that play everywhere in this landscape. So they're trying to do all industries and all verticals. Again, varying degrees of capability and what they're known for. So, for example, Big Four might be very strong in big tech implementation projects. So every company that is diversified over 100 plus countries want to implement a new tech system. That's a big thing to do. And Big Four, for example, are known to help on these big implementation projects. And for anyone that doesn't know, Big Four, PwC, EY, Deloitte, and KPMG. And then you've got back to our framework, the tech-focused companies like Capgemini, Atos, Accenture. These guys are more known for their tech and digital. And then, so these are the big names, but then you'll find a whole range of other companies that are focusing just on a vertical, so they might be just doing chain consulting. There are companies that only do procurement consulting across several industries, let's say. You've got, so these are the vertically focused, and you've got the horizontally focused. You might have companies that only do your oil and gas, and that's all they do, and they'll help you on different topics, so strategy, operations, and other topics. And then you've got ones that are really niche, and they focus on a single cell within this, if you like. So they'll do only, I don't know, supply chain consulting for retailers. So these are smaller companies that do that.
If you want a complete list of all these consulting firms, I would recommend to go to the Forbes list for top management consulting firms in the world, and you can dissect based on sector and capability. So if you're interested in this big sector, you can see the consulting firms that work in that specific sector.
Yes, also websites have examples of projects each company does. So if there's an interview coming up, to have a look at the projects they've done, just an example to know what roughly, when it comes to the project, what do they do, what do they deliver as a service. John, you specialized first in digital transformation and then climate and sustainability. What advantage did that give you in your career compared to a, let's say, generalist consultant?
I think probably two things. Credibility when I'm talking to clients. They see me as an expert and know what I'm talking about, and they direct the questions questions to me and my team. So I have a very specialist team that helps with anything related to climate sustainability. And the other one is quick career progression, which was very helpful.
And then in terms of like, how did you end up choosing being a specialist? Like, the fact that you started as an engineering company helped, or like you ended up saying, oh, climate and sustainability is where I want to be as a special consultant?
Yeah, I think for me, the sector was an easy one, like the horizontal, Kareem was saying. It was an easy one to just say, oh, I really like infrastructure and energy from my engineering days. I want to do consulting in those sectors. So for me, I knew that that was the sector I wanted to go into. So when I was looking for a job, I didn't go for a generalist consulting firm because, you know, if you end up at a big four company, PwC, KPMG, or any of the other ones, you have little control over the area that you come into, especially as a graduate. So you apply to a generalist management consulting scheme, and you might end up doing retail when I knew I didn't want to do retail. So for me, I was looking for management consulting schemes in companies that specifically focus on infrastructure and energy. So that's my starting point. And once you go into the company, there's a lot of opportunities to network and try different projects while you're in there. So for me, as I said, I started in project finance and mergers and acquisitions. Did that for 2 years, then digital became a thing in the company, so I did digital for 3 years, and then the company was significantly investing in climate and climate consulting, and there was an opportunity to start a team and lead a team, so I just went for it, and here I am. So.
Makes sense. Reflecting on your answers, it seems it's a good place to start when it comes to thinking. If you're not sure, you might be interested like in tech, you can do tech consulting, example. So from what I understand is if you're not sure, it's a good job to choose just to get exposure to different industries, different types of clients, different sizes of companies, for you maybe then to either continue and say, okay, I like doing this, or either say, okay, no, I really love cloud implementation projects, I want to become a cloud expert, for example. So you see these shifts from consulting to more specialized industries, or become a tech expert or a data analyst or a supply chain expert, and vice versa as well. So do you see people coming from climate that always been in climate and they become consultants in that specific industry? Like, do you see the other side of the
clients becoming consultants?
Exactly, or someone who's been an expert in their career, always been in supply chain for a specific company, but then they consultant in that industry?
Yeah, it's like you're reading my recruitment strategy right now. So as I said, I've been recruiting for the last years. I've just recruited kind of multiple kind of pure consultants who do climate and sustainability. But the closer I get to specific clients, the closer I want to open specific sectors, you know, rail or energy, you know, you specialist deep understanding of those sectors and how they operate. So one way to do it is to go to a consulting firm and get someone from there who's been doing the same thing for 20 years, or you can go to a client and just say, look, you know, do you want to come to the other side of the equation? And a lot of clients do that. A lot of clients, they feel like they've been doing their role in the client company for a long time. So it's that consulting offers the ability to work on multiple projects, gives variety, gives, you know, the ability to apply your experience in different sectors and the like. So it's also attractive for them.
You can understand, can get boring working in the same industry, same team for 10, 15 years. You would want to change for sure.
If I may add, I've seen people do that, but it's not as simple because there are certain skills that you need as a consultant, and some people just advance in their careers without building these skills, and they find a hard time adjusting. Like being very structured in the way you communicate messages. As a consultant, you need to really know how to have your verbal and written communication skills on point. And it's something that you develop over your consultant. Other people, for example, have never touched PowerPoint or Excel, and therefore they find a hard time adjusting to these things. And like the questions and skills needed differ by the level you're joining. Like if you're joining as a senior advisor, then you probably don't care about PowerPoint and Excel. But if you are joining at a junior to mid-level and you're managing teams, you need to have these skills. And you consider yourself as someone who knows how to use Microsoft Excel and how to present and so on, but within consulting, like everything feels that these are a bit on steroids. Like you need to know how to use them very well. But again, that differs also by company, like how much they emphasize on these skills. For example, big strategy consulting firms, like you need to be very sharp with your communication, whereas in other companies, just develop a page with a poor structure and then they just won't care. So it really depends on which firm you're going for. But yeah, it's doable. It just depends on at which level and to which company you're going, because the requirements will be different.
And for your career, you started with strategy and so, which is one of the firms you start like heavy on strategy. They have that experience of delivering strong strategy to clients. Then you went to FTI, which is more vertical, more of a vertical focused firm, if I'm not mistaken. Then back to BCG, but you've always been kind of like trying industries as in like industry consulting. So for those who are considering to be a industry consultant, what advice do you have? Like, what's the pros and cons of not specializing like John did, but trying different industries?
I think pros of being a journalist is you just get a very broad picture, first of all. So you're exposed to different industries and problems. That gives you more of a bird's eye view on things. For me personally, I find it more fun to do different topics, although I think there's a limit to how much of a generalist can be or how long. I think at some point you need to specialize, and I really would like to specialize a bit earlier, but just given that I've prioritized getting to the firm I want, I think slowed that process. If I didn't care much about which firm I'm in and I just focused on my career in a single firm, I probably would have been more of a specialist by now. But I digress. Sorry, the main thing is you get a broader perspective. I think it's more fun getting exposed to different topics, and it keeps doors open if you're not sure about what you want to do after consulting. Being a generalist will extend that runway and keep doors open. But if you know that you want to end up in a specific industry, then I would advise specializing earlier on, because as John said, you'll build your credibility, you'll build your expertise in that area, and you'll accelerate your career growth.
We know John will be in climate and sustainability for a while, so I'm not going to ask him this question, but for you, what are you thinking now? Like, do you want to specialize? Do you want to exit out of consulting, try completely different?
I think part of it also depends on personal circumstances. So, if like for me, I might want to transfer to a different job in my firm, which means they focus on different industries. So that might influence my decision. One thing I know for a fact is at some point in the medium term, in a few years, to try something out of consulting, maybe return to consulting, and again, most likely, but try something at least, even it could be a secondment within or as part of my work. I think getting that industry side or client side experience is interesting. In terms of specialization, I think if you're not super keen on a specific industry or a vertical, as for example John is on climate change, if you're not that keen, I personally prioritize working with people I get along with admit that the people you work with make a big difference, and if you're in environments where there's many teams, many people, and this is not only my view, like I just came back from a training where I met people from all sorts of offices, and I think that was one very strong theme, which is that people prioritize working in the right atmosphere with the right people that they get along with, more than trying to get to a specific industry. Again, assuming you're not super keen to land in a specific industry and you joined consulting because you're not super keen on a specific industry.
It's also one of the advantages of you're not stuck with the same people in consulting. You get to try different teams, work with different people.
Yeah, but
So-
there's a limit. Actually, you have to specialize,
And then-
the spectrum of people you work with will be more limited. Yeah.
We've asked people about their majors, and both of you did civil engineering. So what would you tell if someone in the audience think like, oh, I did probably the wrong year, and now I want to break into consulting? What do you think in terms of like degree relevance? How important is it to break into consulting?
I think, I mean, we're going through, we just launched our grad scheme. Well, the applications opened on Friday, last week.
Send the link as well if
Yeah, send
anyone
it.
is interested.
I mean, yeah, we don't look for specific degrees. We look for people with, analytical skills. You can get that from engineering or business, with great communication skills. You can get that from literature, arts, history, that sorts of languages. So, for us, the degree of is not much of a factor in how we make decisions. It's how you come across in your application and how you come across in the assessment center that we run. So at assessment center, we do test that those verbal skills, those presentation skills, and the analytical skills. So case studies, I've been dealing with case studies all day today. Degrees, not that big of a deal in my opinion.
And for you, Karim, you directly managed to get a consulting job after engineering. So how do you think what should someone focus on now if their degree is not really relevant to consulting? The focus in terms of
I think that's what John said, like, degree, very irrelevant, to be honest, when it comes to consulting. It's skills, as John said. The key skills are you really need to show that you're an analytical thinker, good problem solving and quantitative skills. You really need to show good communication skills. You really need to show good teamwork skills and leadership. And the way you would reflect that in your CV isn't by saying you were an executive in a firm. That's impossible, although as we advance, it feels like companies asking for a lot.
6 years of experience as a graduate.
Yeah, exactly. But no, on a serious note, I think the way you reflect that is on TV by showing that you did internships and placements. I cannot, this is the most important thing to do, to be honest. If you show that you've done good placements that are not necessarily in consulting, they could be, I don't know, in leading
Startups.
engineering firms, it could be anywhere, but something that has skills, like somewhere where you were doing some problem solving, some quantitative skills were needed, that is important. And some firms focus on the names, right? Like if you can land an internship in a more reputable company, then that obviously helps. That's the reality of things. And I think some people also get that, and they focus a lot on placements and internships, but they completely underestimate the importance of extracurricular activities outside of work and university. I think this is, as people become, as graduates become more aware of what companies are looking for, and they tick the obvious boxes of a good average at university, on CV. These are the things that set you apart. It's your achievements, it's your extracurricular activities, and companies look at those. And it's really important not to underestimate that. So being part of a leading role, ideally, in a society or a club, in a sports team, that helps arranging big events, showing achievement, showing that you've done something beyond the usual school, university, doing an internship or two. I think sets people apart.
Also here, I think for me, at least when I was applying to jobs, I was like focusing on, okay, if I apply to Amazon or if I need to show them that I did this project and I have these technical skills. And I forget to sometimes just be very genuine, have a conversation with the person I'm talking with, because they really value these things. At the end of the day, the hiring manager is adding you to their team, so they'll be working with you. So I think that, and maybe John, you can touch a bit on this, is the focus is more on who are you as well, not less, of course, the skills you have are important, but also as a person, just be yourself in the interview. That's very, very important, as it will struggle more in terms of preparation if you're trying to basically depict yourself as a different person and not being genuine. We're going to go to the Q&A. Before that, quickly, anything you advise students to emphasize in terms of, because you're hiring now, John, what would be the perfect profile for you, for example, for a graduate and maybe a bit more mid-level or, yeah?
I mean, I don't think there's a perfect profile. I haven't come across that person yet. But I think my advice to you is if you're applying for graduate roles, please start as soon as you can. These roles, they opened a few weeks ago. They'll close in 2 weeks. So they're quick to fill up. And I know somebody say, oh, the deadline is November, but if it's oversubscribed, people tend to apply very quickly, so they close the roles way before that. So for me, it's start now, and the process is going to be long because companies now do all these psychometric tests and kind of long stage interviews and all that. So you just got to be sort of patient while doing it. And also, if it's not successful this time around, they reopen in January and sometimes in April. But I think most of the roles are open now, and there will be very few kind of later in the year, so in the new year. So my advice: start now and start as soon as you can.
Just to be clear, because this is an important thing, we don't want to be giving. We don't want to generalize. What John said is maybe for Martin McDonald, and some firms obviously follow that approach, but with others it's just a single brand. Like big strategy firms, they have one round for graduates and that's it. They're not opening again in Jan and April. Just keep that in mind. And yeah, apply early. Also, not just apply early. I did this mistake when I was at university in my final year. I got the CV right. I wrote the cover letter. I made the list of the companies, tracked the deadlines, applied, and I thought, okay, that's it. Mission accomplished, and didn't realize that there's a lot of prep that needs to happen before the interviews to be successful, and this differs by type of company you're applying for. So for example, for some firms I worked at, there isn't an assessment center, but there's a heavy emphasis on case studies. And if we go back to this matrix that I described within strategy consulting, the types of case studies and interviews are a bit unique, and they're slightly different to like role in tech consulting, for example. And these take a lot of time to prepare for, and it's a certain skill that needs. So I would really encourage you, if you're serious about getting a job in at least strategy consulting, to prepare for these case studies in advance and not underestimate them. That's my biggest takeaway from my final year at university, because I got to some interview stages and realized that I'm not prepared, and the amount of time I had, which is a week or two until the interview, is not enough.
But also, like, your story is a proof that it's not the end of the world if you didn't make it to.
No, it's not.
Make it, you've applied to BCG twice, and then the third time you managed to break in. So it's a
Yeah,
chance
it's-
to reapply, even if you didn't make it to consulting. Like, you can always become specialized, as you said, in a certain skill, become a tech consultant. So there's always, I think, chances to.
No, it's not that about for sure, but I'm just saying, if you want to apply for a strategy consulting, this is a skill that you need to prepare for. That's it.
Thank you both for the very insightful session. And I think we can start taking some questions from the audience if anyone wants. We need to pass a mic, right?
Hi, thank you guys for the insight. I have a question for Katie. So you said you're more of a generalist. I want to know, when you're doing generalist consultant, in what ways does your job push you to your intellectual limit, and in what ways do you feel like you are not being pushed intellectually? Thank you.
In what ways you're not pushed intellectually? We can actually keep the mic with you, and I can mic if you want.
So if you're a generalist, you are being pushed, obviously, intellectually. But I think the firm you're in also makes a difference. So in some firms you have very robust infrastructure to try to accelerate your learning on a new project. So for example, in big strategy consulting firms, you might have teams that specialize in doing research. You can ask them any sort of question and they'll come back to you with something. So that obviously helps. But also might be a generalist as someone who is more junior to mid seniority on project, but it's most likely the case that the senior person or persons on the project are specialists in their fields and they give the right direction and advice on where to look. And I think that's, again, from what I've seen working for different firms, it's a big differentiator between companies. I think companies that do a really, really good job for a client are ones that have somewhere in the company, whether it's these research teams or whether it's senior advisors or whether it's partners, it's firms that have these deep specialists. And I think that really helps because at the senior level and at a more junior level, your role is different. At the senior level, you need to have the deep industry expertise and guide the team. And then as a project manager or as someone junior on the project, once you have that direction from the most experienced person, who's typically the most senior person, then it narrows down where to look for and what to do on a project. So you're a generalist and that's it, full stop. You're a generalist maybe at the junior to level, but there is expertise that's being directed your way from other people involved on the project. And also another avenue is obviously expert interviews, again, especially in strategy consulting firms, maybe for like it's irrelevant, or for operations, maybe it's less relevant, but within strategy consulting firms, given that you're exposed to some niche on times or things that are not typical, industry expert interviews become really important. So I've worked on many projects where we work with third-party providers that are experts, and we do sometimes 50 plus interviews on a project with different profiles of experts to get the necessary knowledge from them. Because that's, at the end of the day, the role of a consultant. Like sometimes you're told the consultant is someone who takes your watch and tells you the time. It is the case sometimes if the person selling the project doesn't have a clear plan for the project. But from what I've seen with partners who are very skilled and expert, real experts in their jobs, they actually add value because they're able to connect all these perspectives from the client and from 50 plus experts and from senior advisors and bring all of that mental capacity into a very synthesized and digestible, deliverable set of recommendations that the client can go and work on. So this was a very long answer. I think it helps to just clarify what you mean by general, like you're not just a generalist navigating ambiguity on your own for me.
If you don't have any follow-up questions, I do have a follow-up question.
Any follow-up questions?
Yes.
No, ask
No,
your
okay. Because also I was interested, part of the question was when you were intellectually not challenged. So let's say I'm a junior and it's been 2 and I still don't feel, because it happens sometimes in consulting firms where I talk to some peers or they tell me, you know what, like consulting, I haven't really done anything tangible. I've been doing these like projects. Like, what's your advice for someone feeling very intellectually challenged? Should they shift firms? Should they aim to change the project types they're working on? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would shift firms if it's 2 years not intellectually stimulated, then there's something wrong with that firm. Within my job at least, like every week or every day you're stimulated in one way or another intellectually, and if the right environment is there, the company cares about its staff and their development, then this wouldn't be the case. So I personally would change companies.
And have you been through such a phase where you felt, oh, like it's time to?
Sometimes it's not driven by the company not caring about development. Sometimes it's why the company doesn't have a strong selling capability and therefore not utilizing their staff properly. And therefore, if that's the case, that might be another reason why you might want to leave. There might be a bunch of very smart running the firm, but for whatever reason they're not good at sales and they're not landing enough projects and they're overstaffed. They have people sitting on the bench not doing much. And yeah, if that's the case, and there are cycles where it's normal, like any firm will go through that, but if it's consistent over a long period of time, then yeah, it will change.
Any more?
Just because that was like the second.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you for all the sharing. So I have actually 2 questions. One is the follow-up from the first one. So I'm didn't really understand what difference between management consultant and strategy consultant. Can you give us like a very simple example to face the same question from saying like, for example, like how to increase the profit and how well the different solution they're giving from the management and the strategy side?
I don't think there's a difference. Management is just a broader term.
Management is just a broader term, really, and strategy. And again, by the way, this is my interpretation and definition. Like someone else might ask, and they'll give you a slightly different definition of the industry and how they see it. But I see it as, just to simplify it for you guys, I said management is like a broader umbrella. Because to be honest, many people say I'm a consultant, and they could be in anywhere of these verticals we mentioned. And that's why I think strategy is a subset of that, because it's clearer, and it's a more narrow set of problems compared to management consulting. Management consulting is broader, and the verticals I mentioned, strategy, operations, tech, in my definition, I see them sitting management consulting.
Okay, so the following question is, when I'm looking for a lot of graduate scheme job, they actually separate this.
Sorry,
When I look for those graduate scheme job, and they, like the same company, take PR for example, they are asking like if you apply for the strategy end and you couldn't apply the PwC management consulting. So they are mentioned like they are different and you need to pick one. So how, if I really decide, how should I like apply at this time?
I think thinking about that type of company specifically, so strategy is what Kareem does in terms of that big picture thinking. And their definition of management is the implementation of the recommendations that come out of strategy. So if the strategy is expand into new markets and here's a plan how to do that, the management consulting side of it is okay. what's the program to do that, what's the plan, how do we, the right resourcing to do that, how do we help the client explore that market specifically and think about the resources that they need, the structure of the company. That, you know, it's more of the doing, I suppose.
Yeah, but basically within that context, it's what John said, like the strategy and it's probably the strategy consulting vertically mentioned, and then the other side is probably the operations consulting, and I think they probably have tech one as a separate one.
Could I do one more, like, so will they be any different when they're looking for in the interview, or different
Yeah.
question when they asking during this interview?
Sales probably similar, but process is different. Process, the point I mentioned, preparing for case strategy consulting case studies, that's a very specific type of interview, and it's different to the operations, or in your definition, the management consulting side of things, experience. I think the strategy consulting one, in my opinion, is harder in terms of interview and what you need to prepare for. The operations one, from what I've seen, at least for graduate scheme, there's more emphasis on your soft skills, your behavior questions type of things, and maybe an assessment center where they test your quantitative skills and so on. And within strategy cases, there's more, it's more of a business problem you need to crack, which is, I think, less prevalent in the operations. But again, differs by company. There are operations companies which review cases, obviously.
Thank you very much.
We'll answer all questions.
So anyways, a lot of confusion. So my name is Orko, hello. And I have two questions. One would be a little general question, that is, in this world of constant change and change of dynamics in this whole world, because the AI and there's various rise of ESG and CSR. So I wanted to know that what's your take on where consultancy, management consultancy, strategy consultancy, and other niche of consultancy will be standing in the future, or what's your guys' perspective on it? Point of view, basically.
I think first of all, you mentioned all the buzzwords, so I think you're ready to land a job in consulting. Just as the asset work will be the same, it's just the way it's done will be different. So clients will still face the problems that consultants are solving today, but on a team that's trying to do that, the shape of the team might be different. For example, if we're focusing on AI at least, you need less resources. I personally, on my job, a lot of the tasks I do are accelerated by using AI. So going forward, one impact would be less resources in terms of consulting companies trying to do their projects. Another thing is maybe less projects end up being funneled to consultants. When we talk about the existing problems or the traditional problems that consultants have been working on, so maybe the volume might change, or maybe it might not change, but the nature of the questions might change. What I mean, because some problems AI will try to address without the need for consultants, for example. But I personally see that more on the operations and side, maybe less so on the strategy side. Because within the strategy side, there's no one solution. There's a lot of thinking, and there's a lot of negotiating with the business to try to see what's right. And while AI might iterate certain tasks on a given strategy project, I don't think it will eliminate the whole need for it. And by the way, strategy consulting firms or consulting firms in general all of them are investing in AI, and they know what's coming and they're preparing for it. Yeah.
think so. Just to quickly follow up, so I think what Karim covered was from an internal perspective in terms of how is AI, for example, affecting the consulting firm itself. Same for climate. Travel is associated with consulting. I think now with companies, especially a lot of consulting firms think about their carbon emissions. They're starting to develop policies that limit the amount of travel that consultants do because of their commitments to lower carbon and how they operate. On the flip side, in terms of like the clients, these things, AI, carbon, ESG, CSR, whatever, they're not the consulting firms, they're also affecting the clients. So the clients are also coming to us as consultants and asking, how is AI going to impact me? Can you help me? How is ESG impacting me or climate? Can you help me develop a strategy to maximize this opportunity? So from my perspective, because I have been in those fields, my workload has just like immensely increased. But as Karim was saying, we've got invested tools internally to help out. We've got like a Mott MacDonald chatbot that you can ask anything, and it just relies on all previous reports, all previous information that we fed it over the last 2 years, and it gives you distinct answers, just like the expert interview stuff that Karim was saying. Like we've got chatbot, and it relies on all of the previous projects that we've worked on. So we can provide, give an example of where we've developed a digital strategy for a train operator, and then you get that, you get all the information, and you can use it for your next project.
Can I ask one more question?
Robert, you can ask later when
Yeah.
we're in the middle of it.
Yeah, sure.
Good one?
Yeah.
I promise you.
Thank you both for your insights. I wanted to ask Karim, you said earlier that rather than specializing, you prioritized into a certain firm. I was wondering if you could be more specific of your experience between the different firms you were at, and like the culture, the types of projects that you worked at.
I'm not gonna mention names and touch on specific firms, but I'll give you a general idea in terms of themes, let's say, by company type. Within strategy consulting firms, from my experience, there's many differences. One, I would say the type of problems obviously you're working on are more challenging, I would say, and they're different. The pace is higher, and the expectations and the caliber of people is probably higher because of the nature of the projects. Like if you're in front of the executive team of a big company, the expectations from you are different than if you're working with a business unit leader on an operations project. So I think these are some differences, but the workload is higher. With the higher pace, the workload is higher. Probably the hours are a bit longer, I would say. The types of, the length of the project is different as well. So with strategy consulting firms, are exposed to more projects, given that the length of a given project is shorter. Whereas operations consulting, you're working on at least several months or maybe several years. So these are maybe some differences, but on the flip side as well, operations consulting firms, you could argue that the work you're doing, the impact you'll see much faster. Some people drive more from that because they're working on something and it's changing live, like they might be implementing a system or optimizing certain processes or whatever, and therefore the change is live and immediate. Some people like that. Some people don't like doing a strategy project for a couple of months and then not knowing what happened to that. So there are different preferences there. Are there certain dimensions like you want me to focus on in terms of comparison, or not really? And the culture part, I think you mentioned the culture. I think that depends on the company. Honestly, it could be. I don't think it's correlated to the type of work in any.
I think I'll follow up with you later.
Okay, sounds good.
I think we have time for like a final question and then we'll move to the networking.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the talk and insights. My question is asking a little bit more about the world of consulting today and how like market trends are looking for the future. So typically do you find that with your specific firms competing with a lot of other consulting firms for the same projects? How does the client, like the number of client projects differ from, or how does it balance with the number of consulting firms willing to offer their services? And is that changing as we're going forward?
I think, so, I mean, the consulting market it goes through cycles, but overall it's in constant, sort of it's been growing and it's in constant growth. And the way I know is I see how many new consultancies every month and every year.
Also data shows that.
Yeah. And in terms of, I suppose, kind of how we're competing with others and the markets, I mean, again, it depends on the sector and it depends on the consulting. As Karim was saying, there's firms that specialize in specific verticals or horizontals. So, you know, like if you're going for a specific project, you kind of know who your competitors are and you do a bit of kind of market research before going for a project to kind of understand, okay, what's my competitive strategy here? You know, what are the things, we call them win themes, things that I need to talk to the client about to make sure I win this next project or opportunity. It could be work that you've done with them before, that you know is follow-up, or this new opportunities that follow on from that. It could be personal relationships, it could be, I don't know, a thought leadership piece that you put out in the market a few weeks ago that relates to this opportunity, that sort of stuff. And sometimes you need to partner with other consulting firms, like we're seeing that quite a lot in terms of you've got complementing capabilities between consulting firms, where, you know, we've done a lot of partnerships with the Big Four, with PA Consulting, with, you know, we've recently partnered with EIs and some sustainability work, so we do that quite a lot because we see there's complementary capabilities. So the one thing I'm seeing is consulting firms as partners and not as competitors. That's one thing I'm starting to notice.
Just when it comes to competition, also tech is influencing the industry in terms of before you had introducing cloud to a company, the tech companies like AWS were focusing on the technology itself, but now it's more of actually when we supply chain using cloud, they have X, Y, Z problems, and how can we solve them? And this might eliminate some of the work that Accenture is now doing where they help people implement cloud. So it also you have competition coming from tech companies making their service more usable by specific industries, where some of the work that these guys are doing is being now kind of replaced by a very good technology that touches on the service industries as well, and not just the core technology itself, if that makes sense.
Thanks.
I guess for all the remaining questions, all the speakers will be here. You can come up, you can talk to them, you can ask them.
May I just ask, do people still have specific questions, or like we can take maybe a couple more if there's like pressing questions?
There's one here.
Because I think it's just the benefit is probably bigger if we share with them. Unless people want to.
We can. I think it's good to do it part of the networking in case. Let's do that.
Just to wrap up, I'd like to.
Yeah. I'll just also add, I hope you found the session insightful, and I'll be doing more of these sessions on my podcast as well. So I just not just in consulting, so I host people in the finance, CFOs, CEOs to share their career path. So if these guys didn't convince you fully to shift into consulting and you're considering others as well, or even consulting, I have interviews with Joe and Kareem. You can scan the QR code here and have a look at the videos that I shoot in the channel. But thank you for attending, and I hope we're able to share insights with you on consulting and career in consulting. So thanks.
Just before we wrap up, I'd like to share some insights about the Queen Mary Consulting Society. As everyone mentioned, case studies are a big part of strategy consulting. We are our first forum event on the 1st of October. We have PA Consulting coming in, they'll be sharing how can you ace case studies pretty much. And a big part is negotiation as well. That is one skill which you can build through the negotiation competition which is coming up. It is not only reserved for the law students, it is open to all. Additionally, on the 2nd, we also have Capgemini. We have 3 speakers from that team coming in as well, so you can come join us for that event as well. And lastly, for a big part on your CV is going to be events as well. You can come join the Queen Mary Consulting Subcommittee and help develop your CV as well. We are currently recruiting. I think legal outreach officer is one position which is currently very oversubscribed, so I'd really recommend you either applying for marketing or strategy analyst. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah.